Okay, shall we get going? 7:30? Cool. Right, evening everybody. Thank you for coming. We've got, just to explain to people at home, firstly, you're not going to have to just look at me sat here the whole time. We've got 7 speakers this evening. It's just our stage is made of pallets, so I was worried about it not withstanding 7 of us, but we will be rotating speakers. So for people who are here, if you need the loo, but get the housekeeping out of the way, the toilet is down the stairs and past the lift to your left. If there's a fire, depending where it is, you can either leave through the front doors, or there is a fire exit here behind the wheelchair lift, or at the very bottom on the ground floor there. We are a charity entirely led and run by volunteers, and it is quite a big space to keep running. So if you can donate a little bit, you are very welcome to. It's how we keep the lights and heating on. So there is a tap pad by the front door that you can donate to, or you can donate via the till, where Dave is currently waving at you, when you're getting teas or coffees. And big thanks to Joe, who is live streaming this evening. We'll put everybody's contacts in here at the end, so if you are sort of near Surrey-ish and you're looking for someone to live stream, then Joe's your man. So to chat about a little bit first about why we're here, we're talking climate hubs, climate emergency centres, eco hubs, whatever you want to call it. There are 5 of these sort of projects springing up across Surrey at the moment. Some are more established than others. Some have been working on it for a bit longer than others. But we've all had quite different experiences in how we've got up and running, and are all focused on maybe slightly different things with the same overarching goal to help increase community-led climate action. So we thought this evening would be a good idea to share with other groups across the UK how we've got to where we are through each of the 5 projects, what the different experiences we've had, and the different sort of strategies and models that we used to try and help other groups who are either in the really early stages of doing this or thinking about doing this get set up and offer advice and knowledge sharing while we can. And we're also joined this evening by Surrey Climate Commission. We've got Richard, who's the chair, who'll be talking shortly. Surrey Climate Commission is a Surrey County Council-backed initiative. They've taken a baseline of all the emissions, all of Surrey's emissions, to determine where the main areas of focus need to be. And they work on getting recommendations from businesses, the community, other organisations on areas that Surrey County Council can focus on as part of their climate action plan. And because of the huge amount of emissions that are out of the direct control of councils, using Guildford as an example, Guildford Borough Council has direct control over only about 1% of the borough's emissions. And when you add Surrey County Council into that with transport, it goes up to about 30%. But that still leaves a huge chunk of emissions that can't be tackled directly by councils, and so need a huge amount of community buy-in to be able to tackle things like consumption and waste, and to help start driving behavioural change around things like active travel, throwaway culture, that side of things. So we've also got a couple of climate officers from Surrey County Council here who have got the Greener Futures programme underway. And we thought this would be really useful because obviously part of what we're looking at tonight is ways that councils can support this sort of community-led project. And we figured it would be useful to have council officers here to say, you know, what the current limitations are, what councils can and can't currently do, and ways that perhaps with suggestions they might be able to look at other ways of supporting community-led climate projects get off the ground. And the obvious way is funding, but there's lots of other ways that could be supported as well, such as finding people who can support with writing policy or getting legal entities set up, finding connections with people in third sector support organisations. So lots of different things to sort of discuss. And obviously a community climate action plan needs to include residents, businesses, local authorities, school, churches, universities. So it's really important to find ways to start collaborating between all of those organisations. So first of all, I am going to just chat about why it's worth getting a project like this off the ground. It can seem like quite a lot of work, and I won't lie, it is, but it's also a lot of fun. I think I probably speak for quite a lot of the people in Zero who have said it's been a real experience getting to this point. I'm not going to go into the climate crisis. I think if you're watching this or you're here this evening, you're probably already pretty familiar with the trajectory we're on of 3 to 4 degrees warming, which will be catastrophic to the majority of life on Earth. So I really want to speak more about why it's critical to get this sort of project off the ground to help generate that community buy-in. And a big part of that is obviously we saw at COP, and we can see in everything that's going on around us at the moment, governments aren't moving at a pace appropriate to the scale of the threat from the climate crisis. And so I think projects like this can help offer quite a few different ways to I suppose increase the pace and ambition with which governments are working on stuff. And we've got two pretty distinct choices here. Either we can really just sit there and wait for other people to do stuff and wait for government to actually start acting, twiddle our thumbs while they twiddle their thumbs, or we can start doing things ourselves, taking action into our own hands, and start to aim for the best through mitigation strategies while also planning for the worst, acknowledging we are facing a pretty rapidly changing planet, and how we start building resilience and adaptation into our communities and into locally focused economies that can build self-sufficiency as we move forward. And I personally think climate hubs, CECs, that's climate emergency centres, eco hubs, can be a bit of a catalyst for this for several reasons. A big one for me is that they're a great space to get everybody together to talk about the shared issues that you're going to face in your area. It cuts through the faceless divisiveness of social media. It helps remove a lot of the culture war that vested interests are trying to drive, and the politicisation of pretty much anything really, which climate is definitely going the way of as well. And it puts all the community face to face and starts tackling this issue from the perspective of the one thing that we do all share in common, that's we're all part of one community in the town or city or villages that we live in. And we'll all largely face the same impacts of the climate crisis when it starts hitting us in whatever way that might be for our own areas. And so it's really important that we start looking at how we build community cohesion in this way to prepare for this. And a typical example, actually, which I think this can really help with, is in the last week alone, we've seen a couple of examples of UK politicians blaming ridiculous energy prices on green levies, which is not true. Obviously, fossil fuel companies are hitting record profits at the moment. We're seeing US state legislatures, trying to blacklist companies that are refusing to work with fossil fuel companies. And so we can see this, like the influence of this, the politicization of climate stuff really starting to play a massive issue in how we start driving forward climate action. And I think a CEC, a climate hub, is a really good way to cut through some of that, get people together and discuss things openly, because everybody cares about the community, the future of their town, whatever it is. And so it's a really good way to bring people together around that. And I think best case scenario, what a project like this can provide is that we start setting the pace ourselves, and we start dragging governments along at an appropriate pace. And absolute worst case scenario, it helps us to begin modelling the ways forward that we can deal with a changing planet, helps us build some of these structures in advance of it becoming too late, so that we do have a united community, and that we can start looking at the ways that we can support each other when resources become scarce, because we all know what the inevitable outcome of resource scarcity is. So we need to be able to figure out how we support each other through that, and it not just descend into chaos. And on the point of building resilience and adaptation, I think this sort of space provides a really good way to showcase a lot of those things. And for people who are interested in things like climate communications, I think there's a lot of debate about whether saying words like climate and adaptation is actually beneficial. And I think we've got a question on that later, actually. And I think a space like this really allows you to showcase a lot of the sort of adaptational strategies and remodeling of how we live and work, without necessarily having to bark on about that specific reason. So in here, for example, we've just launched a few weeks ago a community fridge. The point of that is obviously to help reduce food waste emissions, which account for about 8 to 10% of man-made greenhouse gas emissions right across the food supply chain. We support things like the Guildford Library, which has a library of things. We're trying to help them expand. We support Surrey Baby Hill's closed library and a nappy library. So lots of different sort of community share schemes. We've got a few circular economy things starting to pop up. And these are really good ways to demonstrate a lot of these initiatives. You never get someone coming in saying that is a terrible idea. I would never use that. It just makes common sense. A lot of these things. It helps cut consumption, waste. It cuts costs for people who can't be affording to buy certain things. So they're just sensible ways to for communities to start sharing resources that everybody can buy into and that help open conversations without having to use some of those words that might put people's backs up a little bit, I think. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be honest about any of it, but it helps launch some of those discussions, and then you can go into the reason why once you're engaging people. And on top of that, I think once community members start seeing some of these projects and realise that it's just other community members like themselves that have started them up, it inspires them to do more and to think, well, actually, if this person's done this, there's no reason I can't get this project I was thinking about off the ground. And so hopefully it starts building momentum around the sort of things that we can do as we look to start adapting to a changing planet. And the final reason is that there's quite a few of these projects springing up across the UK at the moment, and I think it's really critical that we are all supporting each other and everybody's sharing knowledge, resources and skills. Because ultimately, the more that we can share those successes and failures, if we're all trying different things, it really helps us land on models that do work a lot quicker. We've got Ruth here from Climate Emergency Centre Support Network, who will be talking later. I think it's really important that people sort of link up with that, whatever stage of your journey you're on, whether you classify yourself as a climate hub, Eco Hub, CEC, or none of those things, whatever you're doing, whatever stage you're at, I think the more we share those resources and start moving things forward, the easier and quicker it is to start landing on the things that do work. And in that vein, I think it's important to say that no one else is going to know what's right for your community. There's lots of people who can give you advice, but obviously the way that we should be going about doing this is to come up with a strategy, build out a framework with a lot of input from your community, and then stick to that. So people can advise you, they can tell you what they did, but ultimately only you and your groups and your community know what is right for them, what's going to work best for them. So I think that's a really important thing to remember, and people can obviously help with a lot of the obstacles and the goals and share that experience, but it is important to know that no one else can really tell you what's right for your town. So this evening we're going to focus largely on what our experiences have been, what our different sort of setups have been, what our goals are, our ambitions, what's been tricky. And there's a ton of stuff that we could say about fundraising, leases, getting a building, all that side of things. And you're very welcome to ask questions about that in the Q&A session at the end. But we decided to focus mostly on what we've done and what our experiences have been. Firstly, because it's all been quite varied. So hopefully with the five of us here, we can chat to different ways of doing this. But also because there's resources, there's places you can go and find the resources on that. So again, the CEC network can provide some of that. We just put a blog on our website today that lists out how Zero did it. So again, it's not necessarily going to be right for you, but it might give you some tips. So we figured focusing on the experiences would hopefully help inspire some people who are either starting to stumble with where they're at or right at the very start to actually get up and running. So when I shut up in a second, which is not far away, I'm going to pass over to Richard from the Climate Commission. He's going to chat for a bit and then we're going to hear, I think we'll go in order. Let's go Chris from Talking Tree in Staines. Just to give you a bit of background on Zero, we actually started this in May or June of 2020, and it took us till September 2021 to get the keys to this place, and we spent 8 weeks refurbing it and launched on November 20th. Talking Tree actually got offered a building within about a week of starting up, something like that, I think. And they actually rejected the first building they got because it was in a shopping centre with restricted hours, which is a great example, I think, of sticking to what you think is best for your project, but it shows you the difference there. Then we'll have Pat from Dorking Climate Emergency. They operated on a pop-up basis in Leatherhead, so it's another good example that's something done slightly differently, and I know there's a few groups who are looking at doing a sort of pop-up thing, so that will hopefully help to give a bit of guidance on how that worked. And then we've got David from What Next in Godalming. They actually they actually already had a lease on a building with a bar and a fully equipped kitchen. We'd love a bar in here. Don't have one, unfortunately. So again, that was a different scenario. Their main issue was really charity registration, because it was right in the middle of COVID, and the Charity Commission was pretty overwhelmed with COVID-related applications. And then we've got Mick from Elmbridge Eco Hub. They started nearly 3 years ago, something like that. Downplay it, a couple of years ago. And they've got a smaller building, but they've got an acre of space, of outdoor space outside. So they've started a community garden. And so it's another different approach, which I think is really appealing to a lot of groups. So there's quite a varied approach in all of those, which is why we felt it was good to showcase that rather than focusing on some of the sort of less glamorous back office stuff, really. But as I say, whatever model you're going for, wherever you are, I think the key here is us all linking up and sharing a lot of this experience. So if you're thinking about doing something in a specific way, you can send questions in via social media. So it would be really helpful for us to find it if you use the hashtag Community Climate Action. And then if you tag us on Twitter, it's @ZeroGuildford. Facebook and Instagram are @Zero Carbon Guildford, and we've got someone who's going to comb through those. We will do our best to answer as many questions as we can. We're not going to be able to answer them all, but we will compile them all into a sheet, and we'll send a follow-up email with all of the questions answered. And we'll also put the contact details on for all of the groups here in case you're in their area or in case you're looking at doing it in a similar way to they've done it and you want to ask advice. We'll put the contact on for the Climate Emergency Centre support network, and we'll put Joe's on in case you want to live stream anything if you're in the area. So I've probably chatted for long enough there. Free to ask questions about Zero in the Q&A, but again, it's all on a blog today, so hopefully it's a very long read, by the way. It says 22-minute read on the thing, so maybe take it in a couple of sections. All interesting. So I'm going to pass over to Richard, and then we'll have the Climate Commission part. We'll go through the hubs, then we'll have Ruth, and then we'll do a bit of Q&A. This is down my shirt.
Are we on? Welcome everyone. As Ben's introduced, I'm Richard Essex, Chair of Surrey Climate Commission. Can I just say before anything else, for those of you who are online, this is a fantastic space, and I've got to say, it's really encouraging to see climate action happening in a sort of tangible form and not some abstract headline from a politician. So well done, Ben, and all your team. Thank you. Just good to say a little bit about Surrey Climate Commission. We formed back in 2019, really from an amalgamation of various organisations, including Surrey County Council, Surrey University, Surrey Chambers of Commerce, a number of organisations who, together, we were all keen to try and push through the agenda of Surrey getting to net zero. I kind of see that the Commission has three sort of USPs, if you like. The first is that we're a kind of conduit. It's a good word, that, isn't it? What I mean is we're kind of a link between what's happening further up the chain and, you know, in a Surrey sense, we've got a good relationship with Surrey County Council, some of the districts and boroughs as well. And we're building a good network with organisations on the ground. And I think that's really important to create that kind of link. So one thing I would also add is I'm also sit on the Greener Futures Board, which is a Surrey County Council sponsored board which links various organisations together. Secondly, the Commission are also part of a wider network which comes under the name of Place-Based Climate Action Network, bit of a mouthful, but effectively this is a network of commissions all over the country. And there's every time I go on the network events, there's always a new commission starting up, which is really encouraging to see. And we are beginning to create influence nationally. So we had a meeting the other day. Andy Gouldson, who chairs the Leeds Climate Commission, who kind of leads the network, he's looking for a response on the Levelling Up paper. I don't know if anyone's seen the Levelling Up paper, but it's quite interesting. Nothing mentioned, by the way, about climate change in the 12 missions. And the first thing I could see about net zero was on page 52. So I think that says a lot about how, joined up the thinking is at the moment from central government. So a lot to be done there, and the network are putting together a response from commissions all around the country on that. So, we are carrying some influence there. And I think the third point on being a conduit relevant today is the fact that there are organisations on the ground like this fantastic hub here, because I think, a lot of it is about actually really engaging with people. You can only do so much by social media and what have you. Actually talking to people can still be quite useful. I keep telling my kids that, they don't believe me. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second point about the Commission is that we do have some collective IP, intellectual property. Last year we produced a baseline report, so we commissioned Surrey University to produce a carbon baseline study. That is now, if you want to see that, it's on our website, so go to Surrey, www.surreyclimate.org, and you'll see a copy of the baseline study, and that tells you, where the carbon hotspots are. It won't be a great surprise for you to hear that 2/3 of the total carbon emissions come from Scope 3, and that is a very tricky area to tackle, but it's the carbon footprint, that's where in Surrey, that's where it is. In terms of direct emissions, transport and domestic heating are the two biggest ones. But by all means, go and have a look and see, because there's quite a lot of granular detail on that. The third USP I was going to mention, and I will correct Ben on this, we weren't actually a Surrey County Council sponsored initiative. We are independent. Kat, who's here from Surrey County, I'm sure she won't begrudge that, but the reason for being independent, I think, is important, because we can be a critical friend to Surrey County Council, and we can sort of say where we think they could do things better. Equally, they could say the same thing about us. So we are an independent organisation. So that's kind of the USP. I'm going to sort of make a sort of demand now and say the problem that we face, and I think this is I think it's a problem we all face, is lack of resource. And I was listening to the radio today, and Chris Stark was on, who's the exec of the Central Climate Committee, and he was basically saying, look, we as a country, we just do not have the structure in place to deliver retrofit. Absolutely. And I think this is a real problem throughout. So I think it's important. I think it's almost there's an onus on us all here to actually start creating some momentum and to actually sort of highlight the barriers that are here. And if we can start feeding that back to the government effectively, hopefully we'll start to see some change. So I think it's quite exciting at the moment that we have these fantastic hubs. We have organisations like ourselves and Surrey County Council who are really keen now on feeding stuff through and getting good information fed back. So I think it's a really good way, and I think we need to go back to the government and say, look, it's all very well rescuing the economy, levelling up, but none of this can be done without protecting planet at its heart. And I think that's a message that we should be kind of feeding back. So none of this is going to be easy, but I think climate hubs can play a really vital role in this. And I mean, just on a practical point, I had a meeting with Kat and her colleagues from Surrey County Council today. I'm sure Kat won't mind me saying, but they are looking at a resource of bringing more people into the climate department, and they want to do a lot more around messaging and really getting good communication fed through. And we've been talking to them about possibly having a resource ourselves, and that's an ongoing discussion. But I think it's really important that we as organisations link with the organisations like yourselves on the ground. So I think that's probably enough for me. Well done to Ben and his team and to all the other hubs out there. And I think what we want to try and do today is, I'd like to see is, really spread some good practice, perhaps try and find some commonality, things that we can say, this really works and can be adopted elsewhere. I think that would be useful. So thank you very much, and let's hear the panel.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Chris Hyde, and I'm here speaking about Talking Tree, and really kind of representing the many wonderful people who have been involved in that. I won't go into a lot of detail. I'm going to try and stick to about 5 minutes to give everybody else a chance to talk, and obviously we'll have room for developing some of these ideas later on under the Q&A. So we, Talking Tree is one of the CECs, one of the climate emergency centres that have been set up in Surrey, and you'll hear more of the others shortly. So Staines is basically, for those of you who are live streaming, Staines is in Spelthorne, which is a borough just to the west of London in the north-west corner of Surrey, and we've got a CEC there. It kicked off really back in May 2020, where a group of volunteers got together and decided that they wanted to establish something like this and worked out what they wanted. And one of the key features that we wanted to develop really was a vision for what that would be, and we thought that was quite important. And as it's turned out, it's been quite useful to know what that vision was. So our vision basically was basically to create a welcoming space for people to meet and share skills, ideas and information on the issues including the climate and ecological emergency, access to food that's good for us and the planet, how we can protect our local environment and that future development meets the needs of the community, building stronger, more resilient communities and supporting participatory democracy. Now we considered several venues, and as Ben said earlier, we were presented with one quite early on, and that was an old Toys R Us store which had been closed by that point. But that was actually located in a mall in the centre of Staines. And the problem with that was that we couldn't have access to it in the evenings, because obviously the mall would close at usual shopping hour time. And that didn't really fit our purposes. So we kind of held our breath, and we paused and waited. And shortly another venue became available, which was an old betting shop right in the middle of Staines, on Staines High Street, in fact. So we went for that. So it kind of paid us to wait and not to jumped into that particular venue. So we went with that, and in November 2020 we agreed a 2-year lease with Spelthorne Borough Council, who were the leaseholders, and then in June 2021 we actually opened to the public. So that period of time between the two of them, we were converting it from a betting shop into the kind of venue that we wanted. So we opened to the public in June 2021. The organisational structure that we're using for it is a community interest company, and it's run under 3 directors, and we run through working groups which are then coordinated between the directors and representatives of those working groups. And that coordination group meets once a week, pretty much every week, just to share ideas and to keep in touch with what's going on. So those are the facts in terms of the background. Let's just look at the achievements in terms of what we are. So basically, I mean, it's run by volunteers. And in fact, we've managed to recruit 174 volunteers since we actually started it. Now, they're not all now available to us, because obviously, as you will find, volunteers will come and go. But that just shows the kind of level of interest out there and the level of willingness out there in the community to come forward. And we're proud to say, 30 of those volunteers are actually trained up to level 2 food and safety hygiene certificates, which is something we've done to kind of train them up. We've kept costs very low by reusing materials, and Tony here has done a fantastic job in making use of what materials were there in the betting shop, but bringing in just some reusing materials rather than just buying new stuff. We've had some stuff donated, and we've used second-hand furniture. So we try to keep it, keep away from new stuff and keep it sustainable. We've established a cafe which serves vegetarian and vegan food and drink, and that's open Tuesday to Saturday between 10 and 3:30. And we've also kind of created 3 jobs. Now, one's just being formed at the moment, coordinator role, but we've got 2 part-time jobs running the cafe. So in fact, we've created jobs to keep it going. And meals are created using surplus food, and also cakes are baked at volunteers' homes. So they bring them in, and they're delicious. And we've had some great, ratings in terms of the food that we serve. We run what we call a pay it forward scheme. So basically, customers come in and are not only buying food for themselves, they can, if they choose, buy food and drink for other people who can't afford it. And that's proved incredibly successful and very popular. And in fact, we've had over £1,700 donated by customers just coming in and chipping in. We can almost not keep up with it, to actually spend that money. So we've got a chunk of money there we can spend. So anybody in the streets who can't afford food can come in, and we can just give it to them, paid by customers, the generosity of customers. A community fridge has been set up, which basically uses surplus food from supermarkets in the area, and we hand that food out at the end of the week on a Friday and Saturday. So it's given away for free. The key thing is it doesn't go to landfill, so we're reusing stuff that supermarkets might otherwise throw away. A biodiversity group has been set up, so that's basically encouraging people to make best use of land. So whether it's their gardens, encouraging them to grow stuff in their gardens and giving advice, or to make use of land, around the borough. They've established a community orchard is being set up, and things are being grown, and people are being taught to grow things. We're also quite hot on creativity in the arts, and actually in Talking Tree, which I must say is about a third of the size of this wonderful space, but we're making the best of the space we've got. So we've got a gallery set up in Talking Tree, which shows art by local artists on display there. People can buy that, and it usually shows subjects which are kind of on a theme with our values. We hold musical performances, so we run open mic nights, and we have professional musicians coming in and performing in Talking Tree, and those prove very popular. Generally, Talking Tree is full when we hold those events. And we run craft workshops, so encouraging people to develop their craft skills. And we've used some of those craft skills for actually promoting issues that we care about. So for example, we made 50 kind of Model Bs, which we hung around Staines Centre, and that was linked to the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill that was then going through Parliament, and asking people to write to their MP to encourage, support for that. Obviously, we do campaigning and raising awareness for the environment. That's one of our key themes. And we use the space for sharing knowledge, both by using the walls to display information, such as in here, but also by giving talks and sharing stuff to people. And also, we've recently started off a clothes project, which is basically using end-of-line clothes and selling those at a lower price and encouraging alternatives to fast fashion. And the proceeds from that are going to a sustainability project in East Africa. So that's some of the things that we're doing. So future plans, whilst we're currently a CIC, we're in the process of setting up as a charity, which should give us more access to funds and different ways of accessing funds. There's an art project underway called Staines Reimagined, which is basically local artists using their creativity and thinking about different ways that stains could be, and more sustainable stains, for example, and painting those, and we'll display those at Talking Tree. We just recently started developing an education programme on the climate and ecological emergency, and that's something we're doing in collaboration with the local university, and we hope to run that out with organisations that are receptive to that. So that's something that's just kicking off. We'd like to kick off a green enterprise hub, which will encourage local businesses who are interested in improving the environment, so those with a strong awareness of sustainability, giving them advice, and using the space in Talking Tree to discuss those things. Again, we're just starting off a bicycle maintenance and repair hub within Talking Tree. So there's a local cycling business who's working with us on that, and that would encourage locals who have bicycles to repair their own bikes and to encourage use of bikes. We're establishing a community orchard, so that's the biodiversity group that's taking that forward. I mentioned talks, so we've got a programme of talks by internal speakers and external speakers to promote sustainability, so that's underway. And also we're looking at more engagement with local politicians and local authority officers. So just to, before I finish off, just a bit of a look back as to what we've done. How has it gone? So in the space of quite a short time, and with COVID going on during that time, we think we've achieved quite a lot. A lot's been going on. It's generated a lot of activity. We get a lot of people coming into the cafe and visiting our events. Of course, Talking Tree is the people. It's the space is great. It's great to have this physical space where people can come in, we can display stuff, we can chat, and it's good for the morale to actually come in and be in this tangible space. And so much of what we do, of course, is pushing for things that almost feel like they're out of reach. We can't quite see them. So it's good for morale to meet other people that are doing the same thing. One of the challenges to actually speak to the unconverted. So certainly the music events and the craft events are well attended. We've also run discussions about sustainability and the environment, and those tend to be people who've already got the message. So one task is to draw the people in and try to get them to listen to that message. Of course, it needs lots of time and effort. We know that. And it needs to be managed. Lots of volunteers, that they need organising and so on. So you need things like, human resource principles almost to kind of run that. And also back office stuff as well, such as keeping accounts. If you're not skilled with accounts, that's a new skill that you need. I mean, maybe councils could help with that. And lastly, we're running under a 2-year contract with Talking Tree. Now that ends in November this year. That seems to come along awfully quickly, So we'd like a longer contract. So, start working towards trying to persuade the leaseholder to try to extend that. So that's a bit of work that we need to do. But if you ask me, was it worth it? And will we do it again? Absolutely yes. It's worth every minute and thoroughly rewarding. And thanks to the many people that I'm simply speaking for, really. So that's it. So any questions? Glad to take those later on. But let's hear from the others and move on to that. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Pat from Dorking Climate Emergency, and we're very different from all the other climate hubbers because our climate hub lasted for 2 months. It was a pop-up pub. Why am I saying this? Wishful thinking. A pop-up hub. Oh dear, try saying that. It lasted for 2 months, September and October last year. And we come from an area called Mole Valley, and hence the T-shirt, and we thought we've got to have a bit of fun here. And T-shirts are a great way to establish an identity, and we loved having such things. And it's Doug the Mole Valley Mole. So there you are. There's a thought there for anybody setting up a hub. Now, we did it in 2 months, and incredibly, we organised it in about 2 months beforehand. Paul, my co-conspirator here, and I more or less did it together. We organised it. And I would say to people who are thinking of setting up a hub, don't let the fact you've only got 2 or 3 people put you off. You can do it, and people do come. They join in when they see that there's a focus there. So we started our hub. We were very lucky. We shared premises with another agency. It was an employment and skills hub. We were really lucky to be able to do that because it meant we didn't have to worry about all the bureaucracy and so on. But then I could turn to the other side and say we were actually very unlucky because of that, because it confused people, because suddenly, it was employment and skills for 5 days of the week, but on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, there we were. And we had a very different image. We had a lovely cardboard clock and a figure that we put out. And we discovered that people got a bit confused, so they weren't coming into the hub. So, okay, we were proactive. We went out to them and we put most of our stuff outside. People brought books and we put them on a stall outside, and we found that people just came along and we said, help yourself. Oh, is it free? Yes, that's fine. We also had Community Fridge, and I would say to people who are watching this and thinking, what's Community Fridge? It is the most wonderful organisation. I'm not going to spend time explaining it other than it saves food from landfill. We have an excellent local group, Mid-Surrey Community Fridge. Look them up on Facebook and find out more and incorporate that, please, into whatever you're doing, because it's a wonderful way to get people involved. Now, our hub was very small. We had no room to give people refreshments or anything like that. But as I say, we went out into the masses, and particularly on Saturday, there we were handing out leaflets, handing out booklets. And another tip is keep a record as much as you can of how much you're giving out, how many people are coming in and out of the hub, because when you're reapplying for more lease or whatever, statistics are very, very important indeed. So we didn't know what impact we were making because we weren't there for long enough, but we handed out thousands of leaflets and booklets, and that must have made a difference. We didn't notice many in the local rubbish bins, which was quite an advantage. We had to go at things full tilt. There was no time to develop relationships because, now we were there and then we were gone, more or less. But we did end up giving talks to people. We ended up with a fair bit of feedback and a knowledge and understanding of perhaps where to go in the future. And one of our plans is to develop a graphic novel for teenagers with a local school. Another idea is to set up an art exhibition in the local halls as part of our subsequent an arts festival that's happening at the end of the year. We're also, as Circular Dorking, which is our latest enterprise, we're trying to create in our local town a zero waste economy. And these are all ideas that have come from what we were doing. I've done who, where, when, why, and what. The what, we had 9 weeks. We had 4 themes each week, each fortnight, each theme taking a fortnight. At the end of each time, we would have what we called a Friday meeting at a local venue, and they were a really nice way of attracting people to a slightly different place. The pandemic did curtail what we were able to do, and it curtailed numbers. But on the other hand, we were blessed by good weather, and that meant we could go out and people were lingering and chatting and conversing. And we kept a record of the number of good conversations we had in any given day. So, and that was another very worthwhile thing to do. It was exhausting. By the end of October, I think we just felt, but we did feel a huge sense of achievement. We did a lot of the things that Talking Tree were doing, but quickly, and because we didn't have time to develop. And I would say to anybody who's venturing on a pop-up, I'm doing it again, a pop-up hub, don't hesitate. You can do it. It is such a worthwhile thing to do. And also, if you're thinking of doing a full-time, a long-time hub, then consider, if you're, oh my goodness, what should we do this? Consider trying a pop-up hub. There, I did it right that time. Consider trying a pop-up hub, because councils will be helpful. They often own premises that they can let you have for a limited time, or landlords, if they know that you're only going to be there for 2 or 3 months, they're much more liable to let you have a lease at a peppercorn rent. So would we do it again? Definitely. And I'll hand on to the next person.
Cool. Indeed, it is a bit mastermindy up here. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm David. I'm from What Next, and we're based in Godalming. I'll say a bit more about that when we get into it. So it's a bit wider than that. It's great hearing all these stories about where all these hubs come from and what it's all about. And as Ben alluded to right at the start, we had an interesting start because we were sort of already in a venue, but we were doing other things with it prior to COVID, and then it all sort of paused. It was sort of sat there. And then this opportunity for developing climate emergency centres came through Ruth and Phoenix and Ben and various other routes and that, and landed in our inboxes. And we didn't initially think about a venue that we're in at the moment, although we'd got a link with it. But we thought, well, this is an interesting idea. And we got a founding group together. We thought, well, let's just get a few people together and see what we might do. And that was a lovely first 3-4 month period where we just threw lots of ideas around. We were really creative and did that sort of stuff. And decided it would be a good thing to do, and decided there were lots of things we could achieve, and we had lots of ideas. And we decided that we wanted to be a charity. Which was great. But what we agreed with the founding group, we said, was you can be the creative people. We're not necessarily going to tie you in with having to run this thing. So we then did another phase where we got together a trustee group that ran alongside the founding group to actually run the organisation. And that was an interesting model to work with, because a lot of people who are volunteers want to help and take part, but don't necessarily want to get involved in the admin and the running and the bits that start to become legal and all that sort of stuff. So we ended up with founding group, and then we got to the trustee group and put our application in for a charity. Helped a lot by Ben. We drew a lot on what Ben had done previously at Zero, and that was fun because it was right in the middle of COVID. It was alluded to. So there was this huge backlog of charities being funded. And in this sort of period, we decided through the founding group and the trustees that we would move into this venue that we got access to, and we had a good relationship with the landlord already. And we started doing things on an informal basis while we were waiting for our charity registration to come through. And then all of a sudden, we started getting bills. We were responsible for this then, but we weren't a charity yet. And we had a rates bill through that was for all of it, which is quite a bit shocking. And we're thinking we want to be a charity and get all this discount that we're supposed to get. So that was a bit of fun in there. But the charity was an issue with the Charity Commission. It did take a long time. We hassled them a bit because we had to, and it took about 4.5 months before we got anything back. And then when we did get something back, an enormous list of issues, supposedly about our application, and a 2-week deadline. 2 weeks after a 4.5 month wait. And the really curious thing about the outline we had, it was a bit to do with the fact that we were in this sort of pause phase because we had no questions at all about our actual charity application. There was not one question from the Charity Commission about our application itself. But we put in a business plan, which we sort of hadn't taken quite as serious as the application, and there was a few issues with that. But even more problematic was we'd started doing stuff and we'd put a website up and we were sort of developing it, and we hadn't really quite, because nobody was really going to it yet, we hadn't really pinned it down what was going on there. And the Charity Commission started asking us all these questions about, are you doing this and you're doing that, and you say this on your website, and it was like, oh crumbs, this is a disaster. Because we'd said we're doing these things, we hadn't really worked them out yet or what they were all about. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we addressed all those questions with the Charity Commission fairly well, and we became a charity right in the middle of COP26, 4th of November, 11th of November, I can't remember exactly now, which was great. And really, I guess it was COP26 when we got up and running. We toyed with the venue, but we really got established and set up just before COP26 and started running a programme through COP26, which was great. So that brings into what we're actually doing in What Next now. We're based in Godalming, but one of the things we thought of quite early on, which I think was a great thing we identified, was because of all this issue of setting charities up, it's not a straightforward job for sure. We set ourselves up as a Waverley-wide charity with the idea that we would provide a vehicle for other climate hubs to be set up in places like Farnham and Cranley and Hazelmere, and we've got links in with people from all of those within the What Next setup. So we're starting in Godalming, but we've got a plug and go setup for other hubs in Waverley, which is great, and all that hassle of setting those things up won't have to be done again. So hopefully in the Waverley context. But we're doing a number of things. The venue we've got is not a high street venue. We're just off the high street, but it's not a high street venue, and it's not a ground floor venue either. We're actually on the first floor of a building, although we've got fantastic disabled access. It's easy to get in. And that's an issue in itself because we don't have the same setup you have in Zero here with people wandering past and coming in. So we've set ourselves very much up on an events-based type setup where we're running particular things and advertising and promoting them and bringing people in. But we recognise the importance of the high street, so we've also developed our What Next Lounge concept, which came from the wife who sat over there. And that's a sort of mobile version. Our venue's quite sort of smart and proper, as you'd expect for Godalming, and it's like a very, very, very nice to look at and that sort of thing, and a nice environment. So we wanted to recreate that. So we've got this lounge we take out onto the high street and 2 events, which has got carpets and sofas and lovely decor around the edge of it. And we sometimes put a TV in, and What Next TV comes up and has all climate stuff on it and that. And we take that out and about, and we've got a whole programme of activities running from April through to September, where that will be going out once a week. But of course, you're sat in your lounge And we can't take the TV out all the time, of course, so you want some entertainment. So alongside that, we developed our Eco Theatre group, and it's all street theatre, and we started running that in COP26 and created a massive stir on Godalming High Street, and fortunately didn't manage to garner any complaints, although we did try significantly hard with our characters of Nolene, the Earth Sprite's queen, and Treebeard, and the mad scientist Faraday. I'm not sure who plays him. So that's the thing that's going on. And that side of it, that entertainment side of it, I mean, we're great with Talking Tree and what they're doing. We've got our first open mic and jam coming up next week. We're ecotainment evenings planned for once a quarter, which will be completely eco-focused. And climate comedy is another area we're pushing and trying to develop on our ecotainment evenings. But alongside all of that, you have to have the more information-based activities. So we have a climate club that runs once a fortnight, which is theme-based, and we get people in for a bit of supper and a cup of tea or coffee and see what's going on. And the food issue, which has come up in all the hubs so far, is a big one. And our first big project we're applying for funding for is our growing and food project, where we're tying in with the allotments associations and other food groups around the Godalming area, and looking at it right from what's coming through the allotments, can we get it into our catering kitchen and turn it into things we can give away to people. We've got some good relationships with other organisations to try and get food in and produce it and give it on to people. And one of our more interesting things that's come up on the food side of things is we were approached by an individual who wanted to do fine dining, of all things, because we have a catering level kitchen and all this sort of thing, and he wanted to use it for that. And we said, well, that sounds good, and he wanted to do this, but we said, if we're going to do this, it's got to be sustainable. And so we pointed in the direction of the Eat Lancet report and the Eat Lancet diet, which is a sustainable way of considering food consumption. He said, if you can do it within a remit like this, that's something we would look at and would be very Godalming, we thought. So that's all great going on. And the other element I'll sort of finish on is just saying how important it is to build up and develop your relationships with your local councils. We have a fantastic relationship with Godalming Town Council. We've done a lot of work with them. We've had the councillors in the venue and running workshops for them. We've worked with Waverley Borough Council, which are based in Godalming, and through them tied in with schools and run our climate action workshops, which have proved very popular, which we can tell people about. And that's fantastic. And miracle of miracles, it turns out that we are being favoured by the next mayor of Godalming, who has decided to have us as the mayor's charity from May 2022. So we've got a whole year. We've got a whole year of being that, and it's with great gratitude that I thank the mayor to be of Godalming for that particular honour. And I have to confess, it happens to be my wife. But there you go. So that's it. That's it from me. I'll hand over to Mick. Whoops.
The last speaker drew a comparison with Mastermind. I'm thinking this is more or BBC bedtime stories. Good evening, everyone. How creepy is that? Okay, so my name is Michael. I'm the founder of the Elmbridge Community Eco Hub. Anyone who knows me knows that I can talk for Ireland. So I'm going to stick to my notes just to keep on point. So we're based in Walton-on-Thames in the north of Surrey. 3 years ago, I gave up work for health reasons, and I started seeing an awful lot of litter around. So I started just picking up litter, and then my family got involved, and then other people from school, the kids, started getting involved. They wanted litter pickers from Father Christmas, and We thought, we're onto something. So we started a group in the little town, and we now have 332 members. We've picked up about 10 tons of rubbish off the streets. So it became very tangible what we were doing, but we could see that there was an awful lot more that we could do. Having a lazy Sunday morning, Country File was on, and they were doing an article on Library of Things from Share Froome. And I was just like, oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. But isn't it so sad that we have to actually create and manufacture something that used to be called neighbourliness? But here we are. You have to go become a member of an organisation and pay to borrow stuff. But actually, the concept is very tangible. One lawnmower can cut 50 lawns in a day. We don't need 50 lawnmowers for 50 lawns. It's ridiculous. But that's the way things are marketed to us these days. So I thought, I'm sure we could do that here, 25,000 people in this town, we can do that. And then the idea of a community fridge came along. Same sort of thing. We could divvy up surplus food, see if they go into waste, do a little bit for the planet. And then all these other things came along as well. So the idea of a hub started to formulate, and that was about 2 years ago. And then, of course, we got hit by COVID. So everything stands still, which was the same for everyone and everyone out there in virtual land. But, you come out of that. We've all suffered in some way or other. We've all suffered from social isolation, from COVID itself, with loss of friends and family, of jobs, of employment opportunities. Financially, we've all suffered. We're suffering now with increases in energy prices, food shortages. Thank God, no more toilet roll shortages. But we thought, we can do something now. We can push this concept of an eco hub on. So we set up as a legal entity, as a CIC, community interest company, basically because it was very easy to do. Took a couple of days to do the paperwork, sent it off, job done, all good. We have a legal entity. We can be held to account. And it's not me, it's the organisation. So it has its own identity. Our aim is ultimately to become a CIO, but we want to do a proof of concept first. We don't want to put all of our time and all of our efforts and everyone else's money, because that's what we rely on, donations and grants, etc., into something if it's not going to work. So we're giving ourselves a year to see how this works out. We're 100% volunteer-led at the hub. There are 8 of us on a steering committee. We all come from very different backgrounds, but we're all giving up amounts of our time to make this thing work. Our model is a hub and spoke model. So people at home, if you can imagine a bicycle wheel, the hub is actually the hub where we are. It's the building, but it's also, more importantly, the people. But the initiatives that we run, we've got 12 different initiatives that we're running, are the spokes. And what we can do, each of these initiatives, if we see that the community aren't engaging in any one thing in particular, we can tone that down, put the energy and the resource down, and put that energy and time and resource into something else that the community are engaging with. So it's a lovely kind of idea. The danger is that they engage with everything, and we're just boom, and it's so busy. But that's all right. That's okay, because we have lots of volunteers, and my wife has been sending me some data through the evening. I'll come on to that in a minute. But what do we actually do? What are these spokes? What are these things? So we also have set up a community fridge, which actually goes live on Monday coming. So we're not quite there yet, but big launch on Monday. We've got a community garden, as Ben said, and we've split it into 3 distinct areas. We have a growing area where people come in and they can grow fruit and vegetables, flowers and herbs. It's difficult this time of year, but we're doing all the prep work for that. We then move into a sensory area, which is all planted up now and ready to go. And it's just gorgeous. It's going to be really, really lovely. You can walk through it and different scents, smells, colours, the sounds as well, because all the different textures. And the little birds love it. They're coming seeds and plugs and bulbs going in there, and the bluebells are beginning to come up through. The crocuses and snowdrops and daffies are all out now. So we're actually beginning to see something, as opposed to, it's a piece of grass. We're actually getting somewhere with it. In addition to that, we're running a repair cafe, a skills share, library of things, a book swap, seed bank, litter picking, as before, plastic-free refill, which is non-food, so your household cleaning materials, that sort of thing. We have a jigsaw swap, which is amazing. I love jigsaws. Small item recycling, so lots of TerraCycle kind of things, much like Ben and his team are doing here. And then we have our community space, which is not very like what we've got here, because this place is massive. And what we have is 40 feet by 15, but it's warm and it's dry. Now, our ethos is about reducing waste. It's about developing community cohesion, particularly after what we've seen during COVID, where thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people come out and volunteer to support everyone else in the community. Then we've seen that drop off a little bit, but our ethos is trying to bring that back out. Let's engage with people and let's keep it long-term engagement. We don't need an illness to bring people together. Let's keep these things going. And of course, to improve our environment. And our ultimate goal is not carbon neutrality, but actually carbon negativity. We're going to produce our own energy, hopefully. And everything that is on site stays on site. So we compost everything. Any waste coming from the community fridge goes into our hot composter, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. Everything stays on, and we're giving back, kind of thing. And we're very data driven. My background is in medical research, so I love data. So everything that we do, we have a social impact and an environmental impact, and we measure that. And at the end of the year, at the end of each month, adjustable because of this hub and spoke mechanism. It's been 2 years in the making. It's gone from concept to tangible over that period of time. We were originally taking on Elmbridge Hall, which was the community centre in Walton, and we worked for a year with Elmbridge Borough Council on managing and taking on that lease and set up 23 maintenance contracts, etc. And then quite literally the roof fell in a couple of weeks, literally caved in, maybe 2 weeks before we were signing off on the lease. Thank God it was before we signed and not after, or we'd have been responsible. But what the council then did, the officers, and I'm making that clear, it was the officers, they banged their heads together and came up with, we have this other alternative for you. Don't know that you like it. It's not quite the same size, teeny tiny little place. But when we seen it, we just went, wow, this is perfect. It's manageable. It has a bathroom, a kitchenette, and a single room hall. But it has the 1/4 acre plot. And we couldn't get in through the door of the building. We couldn't see the end of the garden with the grass was that high. The buddleia had sprouted up everywhere. But, a team of volunteers have come in and cleared it. And now it's really looking lush. What we've done with the building is we've done a community DIY SOS. So we got community buy-in. We've had people come in and do the electrics, the plumbing, they've installed heating, we've got hot water. None of these things were in this building. It was a stable block. It's fully decorated, carpeted. We've got our environmental health 5-star hygiene rating just on Friday, so very happy about that. And so on and so forth. The idea behind what we do, the ethos, is based on growing and repairing and borrowing, sharing, making, taking, but most importantly, talking and laughing. If it's all serious and all doom and gloom, the earth is dying, we need to shock horror, let's do something about it. We're going to scare people away. But if we make it a pleasant and safe and warm and welcoming environment, more people will come in. We don't drone on about the environment, we don't need to. Most of the people are already engaged with that, so there's no point in going on about it. And the others, it's surreptitious. They're coming in and planting trees. We've planted something like 37 trees on the plot. They don't necessarily thinking about the environmental positive impact. They're just having fun. They're planting trees. At the end of the day, they're staying out of the pub or they're having a quiet space. Whatever it is for them, that's what they're doing. Now, moving on to our reach. Since we started this 3 months ago, we've got 1,240 Instagram followers, 460 on Facebook. Our volunteer age range is from 12 years of age to 83 years of age, and that's all since the 27th of November. We've got 121 volunteers in that time, 13 Duke of Edinburgh kids coming in and doing their bit, either litter picking, gardening, doing our digital design kind of work, whatever. It's fantastic. We've got partnerships with nursery school, primary school, secondary, sixth form college, Cub Scouts, Brownies, Community Centre, the Weybridge Men's Shed, need a shout out here because they're brilliant. Surrey Choices are an organisation that work with young adults with autistic needs. They come in every Monday for 2 hours. We've dedicated a space of the garden to them. They just get on with it. I don't engage with it. I don't need to. Just facilitate, and they're brilliant. They just get on with it. Citizens Advice, the local food bank, and I will mention Ellenbridge Borough Council, the officers. They've been absolutely fantastic. We pay peppercorn rent. It's nothing. And they've just pretty much let us get on with it. Unfortunately, the councillors don't really engage with us. I don't know that they know we're there because we're brand new, really. We're only 3 months old. Our funders, the local housing association, I think anyone out there planning to do something along what we are doing, you're going to need money. Housing associations are fantastic. Hubbub, an organisation based up in Yorkshire, a charity who do funding. They give us a significant amount of money to get the community fridge up and running. We've done matched crowdfunding where we got £2,800, and that was matched by Aviva in their community and climate call-outs. So yeah, lots of money from them. The Ellenbridge Community Lottery, we got some money from Waitrose, but mostly it's been independent small shops and personal donations. So very, very generous people buying into the concept. Maybe they can't physically be there on site, but they can do something financially, so they throw a few quid in, or indeed a lot of money in some instances. Drawbacks, I think it's important that we just talk about them. We don't want to be anyone's tick box, and that's a danger when some organisations can see you're a service and you will provide something for us, and that's a tick box. Don't fall into that hole. You are, or we are, a community organisation run exclusively by volunteers for nothing, for free. We all give up our time for nothing. Don't be at anyone else's service and their beck and call. Partnerships, that's the way you want to go. So it's give and take. And unfortunately, we were broken into over Christmas, and our place was completely trashed. A lot of our stuff was stolen. So focus on your security. It's really sad. It's really disappointing. I never thought we would have to have any security cameras or anything like that. But we've had to, and thankfully the community got together, raised a lot of money for us, so we now got a security system in place. But that's the unfortunate drawbacks, the reality of today. But look where we are now. We've come out the other side, and we're flying. So, and we're only 3 months in. Anyway, there we go. Enough from me. Told you I could talk for hours. Next.
Hello, my name is Ruth. I am one of the people who's sort of part of the Climate Emergency Centre Network support team. So there's a small group of us that are helping all of these amazing things. I won't talk for too long because I'm sure there'll be quite a few people watching who are already involved in the Climate Emergency Centre Network and are probably sick of my face. And it has been just really, really amazing to hear from the different stories from different teams, and the way that everybody brings something new to it, and all of those things are really important, and they reflect where your community is, and it's really nice to hear all of those things, and just how much people can do, how much we can do if we just get on and get together and do it. So thanks everyone for coming and doing all that. That was amazing. I'm sure it's been really helpful for everybody else watching as well to hear all the different ideas and experiences from the sort of getting started with the couple of months just to get your feet in the door and have a go, to the sort of huge, big Guildford idea and staying. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for, because they were one of the first people to get involved with climate emergency centres, and it just went really quick. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what the Climate Emergency Centre Network is all about. It was actually started, it's been very organic, the whole thing, which is very apt. My partner has been setting up eco spaces of different varieties for a number of years now, and just wanted to put everything he'd learnt into a handbook, thought it might help other people who want to get a space. So he put everything together, and I tried to organise it a bit for him. Still needs a bit more organising. And we shared it with as many people as we could, just say, hey, do you want to set up a space? This is it. And people were really excited by it and really wanted to do it. So they were like, yeah. And then they were getting in touch saying, hey, can I link in with the other people who are setting up spaces? And it was like, okay, yeah, sure. And I set up a social media chat, and then they wanted to, who's doing this? So have you got anything on that? And we started, it's sort of grown from that, basically. It's very organic, and we've now got like a team of us who are there to support the network and the teams setting up spaces themselves. So we sit there, we welcome in anybody who wants to set up a space. We connect you in with everybody else who's got spaces already. We help when people want resources or advice about something. We go and find that. We have regular weekly meetings. We'll get someone in to come and talk to you about something. We've had David come and talk about his charity experience. Last week we had somebody from the Climate Psychology Alliance come and talk about climate cafes. We've had trusted people come and talk about running people's assemblies. This is all in the last few weeks. So we have all of those sorts of things that are going on that people want to hear about. And we share those, and we have a YouTube channel so you can go back and look at and learn about things. We have these weekly meetings. We have a resource folder where you can go and find examples of applications or policies or business plans, whatever it is that you need. They're all there for you. And so we're just there to try and support that process, really. The Climate Emergency Centre idea is just anybody who wants to get involved. So if you want to set up a space and you want it to be about solutions for people and planet, so we're very much about the idea that actually we've got a lot of social crises going on. People are really struggling, and that's why there's this huge polarisation happening. And those crises are caused by the same system as the climate crises. And so the solutions that we need to all of these things are the same. So when we start working on both of those things together, we'll get to the solutions that we want. So it's that solutions focus for people and planet. It's about being local and getting communities to come back together, being that returning to neighbourliness that Mick was talking about, that we've kind of lost over the years as we've lost our community spaces. It's about getting back together again and learning to kind of come together and be together and getting everybody involved. And it's about being part of that is about being part of this network as well, about linking in and sharing and helping each other out. So when you don't know what to do next, or you're struggling with something, there's somebody else there who's got through that or has done that and can give you some feedback or some ideas. Or somebody who may be doing something at the same time as you. So the other thing that the network can do as well is amplify solutions that work, things that people like. It's amplifying those things. So people go, oh, that works. Okay, great. I can do that here and here and here. And it accelerates the output of those solutions. So something that works gets thrown out quicker across the country. We've now got 40-odd teams across the country. And I think it's about 15 with physical spaces. And there's a load of more spaces coming on, actually, in the next. It seems to be accelerating very quickly at the moment. And it's going incredibly well. And it's just really incredible to feel. And I think, a few of you have talked about actually the importance of fun and joy and because the climate crisis, often we're sort of talking about how dire and dreadful it is. It is. But we know that. Let's get on with and do what we need to do now. Let's come together and enjoy that. Right now, we're here. We're here together. And that's great, and it's bloody amazing. So let's be together and have fun together, and then we can create and move forward together. And that's the idea of the Climate Emergency Centre Network. It's very simple. And that's it.
Is it all right to pass one of the mics for when we ask questions? Is that all right? Because presumably on the screen might be able to hear if we shout out. Oh, you've lost a little. All right. Thank you, everybody. I got some questions. We've run over a little bit, but I think we can squeeze in at least a good amount of the questions that we've had so far. So question kind of to everybody, how much money would you recommend allocating to the fit out of a hub? And in their specific situation, we'll be given a white box unit and we'll borrow furniture. We'd like to get community groups and artists involved in the decor. However, I need to propose a fit out budget. I think this probably is going to range quite a lot. Pat's giving a double thumbs down. You spent no money?
No.
So zero?
I think we repainted the premises and it cost us a tin of paint. And then 3 of us got in there and painted it. Quite basic.
So we've got a tin of paint as the lowest point so far. Where's Mick gone? How much do you reckon you spent on kitting it out?
We got the paint for nothing. We went to home base and asked, and they said fine. Sorry, I'll take that.
Yeah. So Mick got free paint from home base.
Free paint from home base. What we've done is with our community DIY SOS is we asked people to give up their time, skilled people to give up their time, and we would cover materials. So radiators, bit of plumbing, bit of electric, bit of skirting board, stuff like that. Maybe £500 for us. Nothing more. Everything else is, second-hand, donated, that sort of thing.
Nice one. So tin of paint, £500. Chris?
Well, it's probably something of that order, isn't it? Yeah, well, probably a bit more. I think, there was an awful lot of stuff that was donated and stuff that we were able to recycle from what was there. My wife spent many a happy hour sorting out wood screws into different sizes so we could reuse them. There were some things that were sort of bigger expenses that we couldn't sort of really skimp on, like we had to have new fire extinguishers and a fire inspection, and so there was probably a couple of thousand by the time we sort of finished. But then it was a huge makeover from what it was to what it is now.
Yeah, inspections are a bit of a hidden cost, aren't they? Because obviously you need them to get all the safety right before you open. We have air conditioning in this place, and a TM44 inspection for aircon is, I think it's like 500 quid for something this size with this many. So what about you? Yours is pretty swanky anyway, isn't it?
I mean, we could probably go lower than the tin of paint. Yeah, I mean, in principle, we had to do nothing. It was ready to go as it was. We've obviously brought in fixtures and fittings and that sort of stuff, but they were a choice rather than something that had to be done. But the one thing in our hub that wasn't set up, it was quite, it's got this catering kitchen in it, but it's not actually commissioned at the moment, and we can use it in a limited fashion, but we want to get it up and running as a fully fledged complete catering kitchen again, and that's what our first project is about, is getting that up to speed. Not that it needs much doing, it just needs a few things sort of sorting out, a bit of plumbing and that sort of thing, and it'll be back up and running. So I think we've got probably about £500 or £600 in the budget for that, haven't we, Shirley?
For the kitchen?
For the kitchen. More?
It'll be a bit more, but there's gas certification,
Yeah. But that's to get an additional thing up.
Yeah.
We didn't need that to start with at all.
Yeah.
As a choice to do that.
And I think we got all our labour for free, but we did spend 8 solid weeks kitting the place out with a lot of volunteers doing stuff like painting. There was about, I think, 60 or 70 inspection holes in the wall where, rather than cutting spaces out with a nice pad saw, someone had just taken a club hammer to it. That took one of our trustees' dads 3 days solid to patch it all and skim over it. I think we spent about £4,000. But obviously it's a big space. We got a lot of stuff donated. Our whole cafe only cost us 30 quid. So there are really good ways to go around getting stuff. So the kitchen was donated by Howdens. It was an display unit. So yeah, and then the tills were the old new look tills. The frontage we made out of beds. The black things were in here just lying around anyway. All of this interactive wall, I pinched those floorboards out my neighbour's skip. The community fridge was a donation from Co-op via Hubbub. This is all, as I said, pallets underneath here, big pallets. We spent more money on top of that on the zero waste shop, but we got all those second hand, which is pretty rare to find those, so we got really lucky. But all the racking was donated from Uni of Surrey's sociology department, and then we just clad it in new timber. We've used a lot of pallet in here. You can't obviously use pallets where you have anything to do with food. And then all the signs, so those skirtings were left over from a job. All the signs are made out of pallets and old ply. Lots of the furniture came from uni, so it kind of depends on what the place is like when you get it, and you can go from fine dining restaurant right down to new look that's been abandoned for 3 years. Okay, this is for Ruth. Do you have a definitive list of other eco hubs starting up or already established around the country? Would be very helpful.
Yes, if you look on the website, there's a network map and a grid below the map. So you'll have there's a lot of pins, and you can kind of look to find which one's nearest you. And it should have their email and website and any social media on there if they have them. And then below that, there's a grid with all of that information on there as well. So you should be able to find them that way. If you can't see something, just email us, climateec@gmail.com, and we will get back to you and point you at the nearest team to you.
And while you've got the microphone, who do we contact for CCs and advice? Is it info at climate?
It's climateec@gmail.com.
climateec@gmail.com, that is. And we will write answers to this in a follow-up email, as I said. If you can pass to Richard. Richard, how do I find my local climate commission if there is one?
Your local, where are they based, do you know?
I think I know who asked the question, and I think it might be Hereford.
Ah, that's a good question. As far as I know, I'm not aware of a Hereford Climate Commission, but I could certainly find out. I know that they are springing up all over the country. I'm going to have to come back on that one.
I think a viewer has helpfully said, which you were talking about last night, Pecan. Does that help with that
Place-based? Yeah, I can have a word with the people at the network, and they would.
So they're like an overarching.
Pecan actually developed from, I think it was funding through the Economic Research Council, and it's kind of all tied in with universities. And the initial Pecan members were the big cities, so Leeds, Glasgow, Edinburgh. But what's happened is they've realised that, there is life beyond the cities. And there's a lot of people who live outside cities. And so they've sprung up all over the country. So, I'll get back on that one, if I may.
Yeah, no worries. Can you pass the Pat, Ruth? Pat, what were the 4 themes for the pop-up hub in Dorking? How did you raise money for the booklets and leaflets, and where did you get your text and graphics from?
Is that all?
Shall I do that one at a time? What were the 4 themes for the pop-up hub in Dorking?
Right, we had energy use, pollution, waste and fashion.
How did you raise the money for booklets and leaflets?
Dorking Climate Emergency sort of paid for some of it. We had a fund of money, and also people donated. So from donations as well.
Where did you get the text and graphics from?
We wrote the text, and helpful people provided the graphics. And I think Paul was pretty damn good at the graphics as well. And his daughter was magnificent. Yes, she was really good. So it's people around being helpful.
Yeah, so I think you can't overemphasise how much people will step up and do stuff
Totally.
when you ask, when there's something that they are actually willing to support. And on asking for donations, I think we were pretty overwhelmed, really. We set a target of our crowdfunder of £10,000, and we're a charity, so you get gift aid on top of that, and we got a private individual to match funds. So we actually raised 25 grand. And we hit the target in 3 weeks, which we were completely bowled over by. And I know everywhere in the country is not Guildford. So we are a wealthy borough. We've got 2 areas in the top decile of food poverty, 2 in the 4th. So we've got quite a big gap there, but it is typically a wealthy area. And so it's one of those things, not just with finance, but with free time as well, that people in other areas are definitely going to struggle a little bit more. And I think that's a good way where potentially councils can come in and help support in ways that they can find some of the resources, whether that be funding buildings or support through voluntary action, voluntary networks and things like that can be pretty helpful.
Can I add a little bit to that? Because I think asking local firms, especially big companies, to sponsor you, because of course it's very good for them as well. It's great PR.
Yeah.
So seek and ye shall find, really.
And there are actually some, going back to the refurb, there are some businesses that give out refurb grants. So we didn't get one from either, but Screwfix and Juicin both actually do community space refurb grants. So competition's high, but it's worth trying to have a look at it. I've got a question for Kat. You can shout out and I'll repeat for you if you like. So Kat is part of the Greener Futures team on Surrey County Council. And you're probably going to be modest here. I think this probably actually has a lot to do with Kat and some of her colleagues. But the question is, sounds like Surrey County Council have been supported. Tips for our less engaged and often climate-denying Welsh border councils? Treading a fine line here, I suppose.
I would say build the good relationships and emphasise the positives with with the officers in the council and work with the willing. So patience and persistence might well pay off.
Patience and persistence, if you can hear that. If you can build good relationships with them, speak to the councillors who are willing to do stuff. And I suppose what feels a bit like banging your head against the wall sometimes, eventually walls do come down. So yeah, go on, Ruth.
Can I come in on that? Just there are a few. You don't necessarily have to go through the climate side of things. You might be setting up a hub that's about climate, but there's a regeneration officer often in the council, and at the moment town centres are really struggling. And having communities come in and set up a space that's going to gather people, they're going to be up for helping you do that. So finding there's a few things in the on the network, around the network, about what sorts of people in the council to contact, but it's not necessarily just about climate. So do look at building those relationships. Yeah.
Just come in there. I'm just thinking, because I work in Epsom actually, my daytime job, and there's a growing number of empty sites, and I know that one of the things that has been cropping up is in these sort of employee hubs where people don't want to commute into London or whatever. So that could be an opportunity possibly where you could combine something and start subliminally bringing in, climate stuff as well. So
yeah, and I think as well another place to look is your local business improvement district, or BID. So they obviously do a lot with town centre businesses. Ours is Experience Guildford. They've been really supportive. Obviously, it is definitely not something they want to see, to have empty buildings, and so they can be quite supportive as well. But I also think it's important to draw a distinction between what a lot of people think of as the councils is councillors, where they might often feel like things are really slow, and the officers who behind the scenes who are trying to do a lot of good work, and obviously a little bit frustrated by what might be happening on what the public side sees. So I think there's a lot of talk in, climate stuff where people say lobbying doesn't work, writing letters to MPs doesn't work, but actually to help support officers, if you can keep on at your councillors, then sometimes that can make a difference, because if you're aligned with what the council officers are saying, then sometimes there is political leverage to be had in that to start pushing some of those things through. So yeah, I think it's one of those things, as Kat says, persistence, really, I guess. David, we've got a fine dining question for you. What was the reference you suggested for the fine dining company? Because one of the viewers was interested in reading about it.
This is the Lancet report. It came out 2019 off the top of my head, and it was in the Lancet journal, obviously, and it was an academic paper that basically tried to look at, on a planet of 10 billion people, sort of looking a bit further down the line, if you were going to have a diet that could be sustainably produced for that 10 billion people, what might it look like? And they calculated all the different food groups, including meat and fish and those proteins, as well as plant-based and that, and worked out the amount you could have per day, which we find quite interesting, because it's there's a lot of issues about food inequality and that sort of stuff, but also about different choices with diets. But what we liked about it was not excluding anybody. It said you can have all these different food groups and that, but this is the amount you can have as an equal share for everybody on the planet, which we liked the principle of. And that's what we said to these people. We said, well, if you did your fine dining in that way, so everybody could participate of it, then that would work. And great on this individual that's doing it. He's going to provide us with some menus that are based on that. And if it looks like it, we'll see if we can do a fine dining evening with wine pairing.
So how...
I was just going to say, can I come?
We're inviting you now to put a ticket for wine and with wine.
How/where do you advertise yourselves? So this is quite tricky, actually, I think. So with a lot of social media, obviously, We've got quite a few people in a marketing team now. There's a few local sites of stuff. There was the Surrey magazine that Godalming got into. That's always a good shout. We've also got really supportive local newspaper here. The BBC Surrey Radio have been really good. We've been on a couple of times on air pollution, community fridge stuff. That's TV Southeast. We've been on a few times as well. It's a bit of a grind. It needs people on it a lot of the time. What about you guys? How do you get word out? It's that perennial challenge, isn't it, of reaching past the climate bubble. If we knew how to do it, we'd all be doing it already. There's no great answer to this, I don't think. But
I think
this is one of the ways
it's very
sharing.
multifactorial. You have to keep up with the social media. Anti-social media is how I like to call it. But you need to engage with it. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, your website. But don't forget about the digitally disengaged. So, as you were saying, there are the local newspapers, the magazines, flyers, advertisements on notice boards, and the local library. Word of mouth. Funny enough, we all have one. Use it. Instead of these things, ears. We can do this. You know, but it is very multifactorial. We can't rely on just social media or analog, traditional ways.
Anyone else got any insights? It's a tough one, yeah. But yeah, I think word of mouth as well is a good one, and it's a good way to actually spread things through the community. As people say, "Oh, I saw this place. The more you get out there, hopefully, the easier it gets.
I think one of the things that we as the network grows as well, is that we get more sort of general network coverage, which makes people more just aware of the whole thing. Yeah. So it's easier for them to go, okay, and find people through the main website as well.
So we were in Permaculture magazine as well. We did a transformative adaptation piece on a couple of things, and CECs was in that.
Yeah, in the Guardian newspaper. And
there was an article in the Guardian. Yeah.
And there's another one about that. I mean, with Pat and the Dorking thing, going into the high streets and to the festivals and being there and having a presence. And we're going to be at the Spring Fair in Godalming, and we'll be there, and we'll be on the high street every month, and at the Green Godalming Fair and all this sort of thing. So just being out there in the community, going to the community rather than waiting for them to come to you.
And another reason why building a really strong network is critical, because it gives you somewhere to spread word out. So I think that you can't overemphasise at all how important having a strong network is.
Can I just say something?
Of course you can.
We set up in a town called Leatherhead, and it's not known for being very climate aware. And it was incredible. I felt the difference that we made actually going out and handing booklets and leaflets out to people. And they were quite shocked that we weren't trying to sell them anything, and we weren't trying to persuade them to go to the local gym. And I would say, do that and have leafleting campaigns where you go to neighbouring towns to physically hand out stuff about the Climate Hub and to show them that you're real nice people and have a chat with them. So try the neighbouring areas as well.
We all have the challenge of connecting with parts of the community. What are the panel's thoughts on how to engage with the disengaged? In particular, is it down to how the organisation presents itself? For example, do words like Climate Hub and Net Zero turn people off? If you can reach the microphone, you can. This is Shirley from What Next Godalming.
What Next Godalming. I would say go for the low-hanging fruit and get it all first before you worry about the disengaged. By all means, talk to the disengaged in their own language. Ask them what they think about it. I talk to everybody. Our building is owned by some people who sometimes haven't paid as much attention to the climate as we would like. And one of my colleagues said to me, I'm going to leave this to my grandchildren. And I just looked him in the eye and said, I wish I could. And then he looked sad and thought again. So, but go for the low-hanging fruit first, the people who care a little bit.
So, this is Chris here from Talking Trees. So one idea is, look for events that are going to attract people's interest. And they're it's kind of a cover, really, for getting their attention. And if you can get them through the door, then obviously it makes them aware of the facility and then perhaps lead on to other things. So I think, as I said, we found our music events have been quite successful, haven't they, Tony? And we ran a craft fair just before Christmas, which is very popular, So you get them into the door and they'll start looking around and they become aware of you. And also we've been, which I didn't mention, we've kind of built a link with a local library as well. So we've got some material about Talking Tree at the local library, and equally we do stuff about the local library there, you know. So it's just getting into people's interests, you know, and attracting them that way and going to places where people go. Mick?
In my opinion, it's about diversity of initiatives. So whatever you're doing, you don't focus on one thing. Give people options of ways to engage, and it doesn't all have to be, as we say, all about the climate emergency. It can be slightly surreptitious. I think some people have a view that people who are engaged with the climate emergency are gluing themselves to trains and nailing themselves to roads and chaining themselves to this, that and the other. That isn't always the case. There are a few that do that. It's rather extreme, but that's their choice. That's what they do. But most of us are just family people who want the best for the next generation. Just leave the world a little bit better than it currently is. And there's many, many, many ways in doing it. The best thing, if we all do a little bit, is better than one doing a whole lot. You know, so if everyone tries and finds something, we better.
Go on, Pat.
Well, we did giveaways. Friends of the Earth provided us, and other people as well, provided us with packs of wildflower seeds, and people really, really liked getting those. And as you give them away, you also give them a leaflet or a booklet about things they can do about the climate change. And often, this is a very good way, because people might not either have the time or the inclination to enter into a discussion, and they might not like the look of you anyway. So they can go home and read it. With Community Fridge, that was a wonderful way to get people involved, and in so many different ways, because they were learning about Community Fridge. And that it wasn't a handout; it was we were doing them the good by saving food from landfill. And we made milkshakes out of the Community Fridge milk and the Community Fridge bananas, and gave them away. And while the children were drinking the milkshakes, we were talking to the parents. And it's just things like that. But giveaways are a very good way of involving people, and then you slip the booklet at them as well. And they can't refuse the booklet because they've just had the pack of seeds. So it's advanced psychology at work here.
And people really got waste better than they got carbon, didn't they?
People, repeating Paul's words, absolutely right. We did discover that the concept of saving food from landfill, of saving waste, was a very concrete thing for people to grab hold of, whereas the whole point of carbon emissions sort of passed a lot of people by, and people were willing to make the sacrifice of not using single-use plastic or whatever. But when it comes to giving up your car, reducing car journeys, that was a very difficult discussion with an awful lot of people, and that's another thing that we discovered through the Climate Hub.
One final comment on.
Sorry.
One final comment on that one, sort of a little bit, I guess, what's been said, but I assume with Shirley's comments about the disengaged, and there's issues with, and to some extent they may be put to one side or not, but it's the want to be engaged. They're the ones, they're the target for us. There's a lot of people there that actually want to be engaged, but don't know how. And we get this all the time, so I've really wanted to get involved with this and I don't know how to do it. What can I do? What are the examples? And be ready for them. The want to be, because there's lots of already engaged, that's fine, we know all those people and they'll come in. But it's that group that want to be engaged, have the stuff ready for them to give them, this is what you can go and do, this is what you can go and do. And that makes a big impact. And children are a good one. Not that we should be targeting children particularly, they're the poor people that are going to have to deal with what's going on, but they're a great way into parents. And it's one of our things with that eco-theatre. Everything is designed to get the kids to come, because you get the kids there, you've got 2 or 3 parents and grandparents and that also there watching what's going on, and they're getting the message, and that works really well.
I've got a slightly different take on that, because what we're trying to do here is build a community climate action plan, which you can't do that unless you get interaction from all demographics right across the political spectrum to build what you can call genuine consensus, which is why climate assemblies, I think, work really well, because you have to pay people to come, obviously, so that you get all those voices, but they do actually make sure you get that representation. And so I think it's quite important to know where that disengagement comes from. So some people just aren't going to give a shit, basically, are they? Some people are just going to look at this and think, don't believe it, not for me, whatever. Some people are going to be disengaged because they're completely overwhelmed by looking at it. So climate stuff stirs up a lot of anxiety, grief, anger, depression, fear, and it is a natural human response to turn away from that and think, someone else is going to deal with this. I just can't face it. And so one of the things that we try and do here is help with mental health and wellbeing support through a team of eco-psychologists, wellbeing practitioners, etc., to try and help people process those emotions and spur themselves into action instead of turning away from it. And then there's another section of people who might seem disengaged but actually just physically don't have the time to be able to do stuff because they're either worrying about how to pay the fuel bills or put a meal on the table. And so what we've been looking at doing, and what part of our bid to the Your Fund Surrey funding is to get ourselves an electric van and some equipment where we can make some of this stuff into mobile workshops and take it out into the parts of the community that do have obstacles around finance, transport, or what have you, and try and use that as a way to engage that part of the community, because it's really difficult, but it has to be done. And it's none of those people's fault that they don't have the time to engage in stuff. We don't want to rely on people coming into here to do that. We've got to try and get out to where they are and say, look, here's some stuff. This is how it can improve your life and help you get more engaged in the community or what side of things. So I think, it's a really tough one. Again, if it was something that there was a good answer for, I think, we'd all be doing it as well. But I think it's important to bear in mind why people are disengaged and whether there are things you can do around that. Obviously, the more momentum you get from going for people who are a bit easier to do that, then it builds momentum and you can draw more people in. But it's a difficult one, I think.
I was just going to pick up a couple of things from what Ben was saying. I think it is overwhelming when you start talking about climate. When you talk about your community, it's not overwhelming. They can see their community, they can see what's needed, and it's much easier for them to feed in and say, actually, I think we need this and that. So focusing on that community level, what do we need here together, is a really good way. And people's assemblies are also a very good way of getting people in. So doing it not where you're going in from a community perspective, rather than, well, I've got this agenda about climate, go, what does this community need? And everybody brings, and a lot of people are already concerned about the climate. A lot of people know that there's a climate emergency going on. So bringing them in and having the process of the People's Assembly itself allows that chance for people to listen and hear each other and find a way forward together. So finding what we all want. And that it's a very useful thing to use, I think, for that side of things.
And it kind of goes back to the some of the things we talked about earlier, the initiatives that loads of people have mentioned, community fridges, library of things. They're just great ideas that everybody can buy into, but they also do have the benefit that for lower income areas, it means you don't have to buy stuff. It means that it can supplement food banks if necessary. So there are real ways that you can start engaging parts of the community with obstacles. It's just getting out there and getting to them, really.
Sorry, I've just had a thought. I was at the network event actually yesterday. Essex Climate Commission came up with what I thought was quite an interesting little concept, which I'm sure David will appreciate this. A menu. So it was like a menu of things that you can do to improve your carbon footprint, and I thought it's quite a interesting way of presenting it, and perhaps in a way that's not quite so sort of confrontational. So I'm more than happy to pass that on to perhaps yourself or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be the last question because it's a good one, I think. Would an eco-village be the ultimate community-led climate hub? It would be a great place to provide sustainable community services such as community fridge, EV carpool / ride sharing, wellbeing garden, a sustainability education, while showcasing zero carbon homes and high quality sustainable living in practice, thereby inspiring others to follow suit. So there is also, that's the end of the question, there is also another thing sort of springing up called land CCs, isn't there? Which is you'll probably do a better job at describing, but it's kind of a merging of those things. So I think we would all really like to see it. I think ultimately what we would probably all like to see is that every town and village just became that, because we don't need a showcase example. We need everybody to start moving towards this. But I don't think many of us would disagree with the...
Can I just say something there? Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I think what everybody needs as well is vision and a sense of what we can move to, because at the moment there's this loss of meaning as everything starts to crumble, because things are crumbling. People are feeling that seeing an eco-village, and actually it's not like living in the Middle Ages. It's actually a much nicer way to live, and meets our needs, and we're much happier in that sort of environment. I think it would be a really good thing to have an example eco-village, but go Rich.
Yeah, no, I was just going to follow on from that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be an eco-village, but I think, you could have something like a transport hub, for example, which encourages active travel and things like that. So it could be on a smaller scale. And the one thing I would say is that I think if you're looking to attract finance, these pilot projects are quite attractive, because, they can, I think they're more likely to attract finance. And I think once they're successful, then the spin-off from that can be quite effective. So, whilst I think perhaps an eco-village might be pushing it a little bit, I think there are sorts of, if you can come up, and sorry, I've forgotten your name again, Ruth, I think it is a great way of creating a vision. And I think sometimes that will make, let's say, the less engaged think, oh, that looks good. So, that's enough from me.
Have a comment? I'm actually a little bit sitting on the fence with this. I'm not going to be very pro these eco-villages. I see them as elitist. And I think the disengaged will be further disengaged if they see them, because they think that's for the weirdos, the hippies, whatever it is. It very much depends what it looks like. But more importantly, it depends how it's addressed and how that message gets out to the people that are not in the eco-village. As you were saying, as a pilot, I think it's wonderful, but it needs to be broad spectrum, like an antibiotic. Get out there, it needs to be ubiquitous. The theories and the practice need to be accessible to all, not just those living or who can afford to live in an eco-village. And I think that is the danger. It's fine as a pilot, but we need it everywhere.
Should we call it a day there? So that was from, we have a bit of a loose principle here where the person who puts forward a suggestion is the one that basically gets it off the ground. So that was sent in by John. So John, once you've set that pilot of Eco-Village up, please do send us an invite.
This is John's leaflet. We're a small group emerging called Surrey Community Villages. I very much take on the point about it's for everyone. One of the biggest ideas is it's for downsizers, first-time buyers, the ones who can't get onto the property ladder. The idea is it's sustainable, it does the climate, it does the biodiversity, it does all these things, and it does community. Surrey Community Villages. I really take your point on. It's one of the things that we've struggled with. We've basically said, no, it's for everyone. This is the way housing should go, for everyone.
If it's as a replacement for...
Hold on a sec, because you probably can't hear this. So we've got a chap here who is involved with John and is saying that he fully takes the point that Mick just made, and that what they're trying to do is model it around being accessible. Is that hooked? Accessible to everybody. It's for people downsizing, people who can't get on the property ladder, and it is designed around community. So Mick, do you want to...
Yeah, just... I'm just going to support what you just said. I think that's fantastic. The caveat being that I would say it needs to be as an alternative to the way new housing is being built traditionally in this country, as in fast and cheap, but sold off expensively. Not in addition to. It needs to be the answer. And I think that's where we need town planners, councils, central government and everyone to engage in that. So touche for giving it a go.
Okay, we really will end there now. Unfortunately, I don't have another joke to end on there. So I'm just going to ask everyone who has come, if you can, give us a tap on the donation pad. That would be great. We're also supporting the Climate Coalition's Show the Love campaign. So there are a load of green hearts over there. We've got an event around them on the 26th. But if you'd write a message of climate action or something about the planet or whatever takes your fancy on a green heart, that would be excellent. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for watching at home. Hope it was all right. Apologies for the live stream dropping out occasionally. I think it was mostly okay. It's our Wi-Fi, unfortunately. Thank you very much. Well done, everybody.